Michigan as a whole covers about 97,000 square miles, including its portion of the Great Lakes, making it the 11th largest U.S. state by area, yet its population of around 10 million people is heavily concentrated in the southern Lower Peninsula, especially around Detroit and Grand Rapids. In contrast, vast parts of northern Michigan, known for its stunning natural beauty, towering forests, crystal-clear lakes, and rugged shorelines, have relatively few people calling this region home year-round, despite its scenic landscapes. Here, communities are scattered and small, and growth is measured in slow, careful increments rather than surging waves. So why does so much of Michigan remain so thinly settled? To understand it, we have to look beyond the postcard scenery, into the land itself, the industries that once thrived here, and the quiet determination of the people who stayed behind. And if you've ever lived here, visited these northern towns, or simply passed through on your way to somewhere else, we'd love to hear your perspective. Share your stories and reflections in the comments below. Harsher winters. One major reason so few people live in northern Michigan is the region's significantly harsher winters, which are more than just an inconvenience. They have shaped how communities grow, how economies function, and how people decide where to live. Unlike the milder climate of the southern Lower Peninsula, northern Michigan endures winters that can last 6 months or more, with snow sometimes arriving as early as late October and lingering well into April. The combination of long cold spells, short days, and intense lake-effect snow, often totaling 150 inches or more per year, means that simply maintaining basic infrastructure becomes more expensive. Towns and counties must devote large budgets to plowing, road salt, and repairs, costs that are harder to sustain in areas with small tax bases. This extreme climate shortens the growing season to just a few frost-free months, severely limiting the range of crops that can be cultivated and reducing the appeal of agriculture as an economic foundation. Historically, that made it difficult to build large farming communities like those that developed farther south, which in turn meant fewer businesses, services, and infrastructure to support bigger populations. Even today, these conditions still deter many would-be residents who prefer a milder climate and a more predictable environment for work and daily life. The psychological impact also matters. Long, dark winters and the knowledge that reliable warmth may only last a few fleeting months each year create a powerful barrier to settling down permanently. Less arable land. Unlike the southern Lower Peninsula, where broad, flat plains and rich glacial soils support some of the most productive farmland in the Midwest, much of northern Michigan is shaped by rocky glacial deposits, sandy soils, and dense forests. Large stretches of terrain are simply not well suited to traditional agriculture. The soils often drain too quickly or lack nutrients, and the uneven landscape makes mechanized farming difficult or inefficient. Even where clearing land is possible, the combination of shallow topsoil and lingering frost limits yields and shortens the growing season to only a few months. Historically, this scarcity of good farmland meant settlers had little incentive to build large agricultural communities, which were the backbone of population growth elsewhere in the state. Today, farming in northern Michigan is largely limited to specialized crops like cherries and certain cold-tolerant fruits that thrive in small pockets along the lakeshore. But these niche industries don't create the same dense networks of farms, markets, and transport hubs that powered growth in southern Michigan. Remote and rugged terrain. Another reason so few people live in northern Michigan is its remote and rugged terrain. Much of the region was shaped by glaciers, leaving behind rocky ridges, thick forests, wetlands, and uneven land. The Upper Peninsula in particular is a striking example of how remote and rugged terrain limits settlement. This region is heavily forested and includes some of the most mountainous landscapes in the Midwest, such as the Porcupine Mountains and the Huron Mountains. While these features make the area exceptionally beautiful, they also create major obstacles for development. Building roads, extending utilities, and maintaining year-round transportation across steep ridges and dense woods is difficult and expensive. Historically, the terrain isolated many communities, restricting trade and discouraging large-scale agriculture or industry beyond logging and mining. Even today, the rugged landscape contributes to the Upper Peninsula's reputation as a place that feels wild and untouched, a quality that draws tourists but makes permanent growth challenging. Geographic isolation. Even beyond the rugged terrain, much of the region is simply far from major population centers and transportation hubs. The Upper Peninsula, for example, is separated from the rest of the state by the Straits of Mackinac and connected only by the Mackinac Bridge, which wasn't completed until 1957. Before that, travel between the peninsulas relied on ferries, making the area feel even more cut off. Large stretches of northern Michigan are still hours from interstate highways, airports, or large cities, which limits economic opportunities and access to services that many people take for granted. This distance also means fewer job options and longer travel times for everything from shopping to healthcare. Over time, the sense of being remote, not just physically but socially and economically, has discouraged many people from settling here permanently, reinforcing the region's reputation as a beautiful but distant corner of the state. Limited industry. In contrast with the southern part of the state, which developed a strong manufacturing base anchored by Detroit's auto industry and a network of factories, northern Michigan's economy has always relied heavily on natural resource extraction, mainly logging and mining. While these industries once created bustling boom towns, they were often temporary. When timber was cut or ran out, jobs disappeared and communities shrank. Few large-scale industries came in to replace them, leaving a regional economy built mostly around seasonal tourism, small-scale agriculture, and local services. Without a steady base of year-round employment and larger employers to drive growth, it has been difficult for the area to attract and retain residents, especially younger people seeking stable careers. Even today, many towns depend on summer visitors to keep businesses afloat, creating an economy where opportunity comes and goes with the seasons. Limited public transportation. Limited public transportation is another factor that keeps northern Michigan sparsely populated. Unlike more urban parts of the state, the region has few reliable transit options beyond personal vehicles. Long distances between small towns and the lack of major passenger rail lines or frequent bus service mean that people without a car often struggle to get to work, school, healthcare appointments, or even basic shopping. For older residents, young adults, and low-income families, this isolation can make daily life challenging. Seasonal tourism also strains what limited transit systems exist, as services designed for small local populations have to absorb large numbers of visitors during the summer. Over time, this dependence on driving and the cost of maintaining cars in a region with harsh winters and long commutes has reinforced the perception that northern Michigan is best suited for people who can live self-sufficiently, further limiting the area's appeal for those who want or need more connected communities. Access to services. In many areas, hospitals, specialized healthcare providers, and higher education institutions are located hours away, requiring long drives for routine care or professional training. Smaller towns often have fewer grocery stores, childcare options, and cultural amenities, which makes daily life more challenging for families and professionals. Broadband internet access can also be unreliable or expensive, further isolating residents and limiting opportunities for remote work or online education. For many, the trade-off between beautiful scenery and access to modern conveniences is simply too steep. Explain why the region's reputation as a place better suited to seasonal visits than year-round living. Historical settlement patterns. When European American settlers first moved into Michigan, they concentrated in the southern Lower Peninsula, where fertile farmland, navigable rivers, and proximity to growing markets like Detroit and Chicago made it easier to build permanent communities. In contrast, northern Michigan was settled later, and primarily for extractive purposes. Logging camps, mining operations, and fur trading posts, rather than agriculture or manufacturing. Unlike southern regions that developed dense networks of farms and rail connections, the North never established the same foundation of infrastructure and diversified economies to support large, stable populations. Northern Michigan covers a large part of the state, but holds only a small share of its people. That's no accident. It's the product of geography that challenges settlement, industries that rose and fell, and winters that tested even the toughest residents. Without major cities, big ports, or sprawling highways, this region never drew the same crowds as Detroit or Grand Rapids. And when logging and mining declined, many towns simply faded into quiet. Yet for all its empty roads and long stretches of forest, northern Michigan is far from forgotten. Small communities, deep local roots, and a spirit of resilience continue to define life here. For some, that's exactly why they stay. Thanks for watching. If you've ever traveled through northern Michigan or called it home, we'd love to hear your perspective. Be sure to like, subscribe, and join us next time as we explore the stories behind the places most people overlook.